All right, everyone. Hello, my name is Stephanie Butler, and I'm part of the admissions team here at MIT Sloan, part of MIT, of course. I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about MIT Sloan's MBA Early Admission process, which is a deferred admission application process into our traditional two-year MBA program. So let's see. Specifically, I want to talk a little bit about, kind of taking a step back and talking about why you might decide to consider an MBA in the first place. And then, of course, about the application process itself and how it's a little bit different, what it is in general. And then I'll talk a little bit about why you should be considering MIT Sloan because of its community, its curriculum, and its career resources and opportunities, and then we'll talk a little bit on how to actually apply toward the end. I should also, got a little ahead of myself. I should also mention that my colleague Reed will be taking some questions in the chat panel, and I'll try to answer some verbally as well at the end. Thank you to everyone who sent in questions in advance. All right, so why should you consider an MBA? Well, an MBA is a professional advanced degree which is designed to help you make a significant impact as you grow and evolve as a leader and global professional. I jotted down some of the reasons that I think and some of my colleagues think that an MBA is really valuable for you moving forward. It's a great opportunity to either advance your career within the current industry or function that you might be working in prior. It's a great opportunity to pivot your career, to take on something new once you've already been in the workforce for a little bit. It allows you a lot of great breadth and depth with a focus on developing leaders. And it allows you also to build a network of people who are going to be a great support system and resources as your career continues. So the MBA early admission process specifically, what is it? So the admissions process, the application process, gives you the opportunity to secure a seat in a future MIT Sloan MBA class. So you will be applying now as a senior in undergrad or during your final year of a graduate program, and I'll touch on eligibility in just a few seconds. But while you apply now, we're going to ask that you go and gain between 2 and 5 years of full-time professional work experience prior to actually joining the program. And that's important. So that work experience that we ask you to gain is going to be incredibly advantageous for you once you begin the program. Once you're sitting in class, once you're participating actively within the coursework and during class discussion, that context that you've gained from your work experience prior to the MBA program will give you a point of reference from which to draw that will make the experience not only more beneficial for you, but also more beneficial to your classmates. And then, of course, after that 2 to 5 years, and that's completely up to you, we do not define that length of time for you. It might depend on where you are within your current role. We never want to sort of step on your toes if you are given a great promotion or have a really interesting opportunity. You might decide to postpone, so that time frame is up to you before, of course, returning, coming to MIT, the home of innovation, to earn your MBA. I'll also mention too that once you do come back for the MBA, you are a MBA student. You will not be labeled as an MBA early admission student. That's a question that we get from time to time. You are joining the actual 2-year MBA program, just like everyone else who applied in a more traditional application process. So who is eligible? I touched on this just a little bit on the prior slide. So undergraduate students who are graduating during the current academic year, and that we've defined that as August to July. So for this year, August 2019 through July 2020. even if you did graduate in August, or a lot of people or some people graduate in a December timeframe, you are still eligible to apply for this year's application cycle. So for the April 6th deadline, you are still eligible for that, even if you've started a full-time job in the meantime. And then graduate students are also eligible as long as you have not had any full-time work experience between your undergraduate program and your graduate program. Right, so why should you apply to this process? Well, if an MBA is already in your 5-year plan, I'd say there is absolutely no reason not to give it a shot right now, even if it's something that you are just starting to consider. There's a lot of great reasons to do it. Again, the guaranteed place in a future class. Imagine beginning your career with the knowledge that you have a spot in a top MBA program. Having that, skipping ahead a little bit to my last bullet point there, but going into your career as a member of the MIT Sloan community, having the support behind you of your fellow MBA Early Admission future classmates and of our team here on campus. Also, no application stress while working full-time. So believe it or not, your life post-undergrad will continue to get busier and busier, and having this behind you, having put the work in now, certainly free up your time later, and it will alleviate a lot of that stress that might come about by trying to complete a competitive application while juggling a full-time job. You're also a better test taker now than you'll be in the future. The material that you have, you're sort of closer to some of those concepts that are going to be evaluated in the test. You're a better studier. You know how you study best. You've been taking tests for years now, so we tend to see people score a little bit better when they're closer to their undergraduate experience rather than further away. All right, so diving into kind of the meat of our time together today, why should you consider MIT Sloan? So there are a number of great MBA programs out there, but I want to talk about some of the ways that MIT Sloan is particularly distinctive and strong. And 3 of those ways are through the community, the curriculum, and career resources and development. So first and foremost, MIT Sloan is a mission-driven school. And the mission of MIT Sloan is to develop principled, innovative leaders who improve the world and to generate ideas that advance management practice. And this is certainly something that sort of weaves throughout the entire experience here. Throughout everything that you'll do at MIT Sloan, this isn't just a catchy slogan for the website. It really is something that we believe in and draw from daily. So as we think about the community, I want to think about 3 things within our community here at Sloan, and that's, or 3 ways, I guess, rather, that I would describe our community, and that's diverse, action-oriented, and student-driven. Starting with the diversity of programs here at MIT Sloan. So not only do we have the traditional MBA program, which you're starting to become more familiar with, but also we have a couple specialized master's programs, Master of Business Analytics, Master of Finance. We have a dual degree, which includes, which kind of brings in our engineering school through the LGO program. And we also have a couple executive programs. So the Sloan Fellows MBA and an executive MBA as well. And the reason that's important is because once you sort of go beyond the core courses for your program, you will be benefited by being surrounded by other Sloanies with different levels of experience, different skill sets, and different passions. You will take elective courses together, which often includes the opportunity to do some experiential learning, to take on team projects, to work across programs. And of course, you'll also be engaged with one another through extracurriculars as well. And I also wanted to talk about the diversity within programs themselves. So this year's first year class of MBAs, the class of 2021, has 416 accomplished and diverse students. So that 416 does include about 50 from that dual degree program I mentioned, LGO. So looking at them, looking at the class as a whole, it's an incredibly diverse group across gender, nationality, ethnicity, personal experiences, professional and academic backgrounds. And the admissions committee is really intentional about this. We believe really strongly that you are not only benefited from being able to work across programs, but also across difference in other ways as well. The other thing I want to note on this slide is, yes, this class is incredibly accomplished, as are all of our MBA classes and all of our programs here at Sloan, but they're also a really humble group. So these aren't people who are going to rub their accomplishments in your face, but rather want to work together to improve the entire community. So the MIT experience, I mentioned that the community was action-oriented, and that's certainly true. It's a very hands-on place where people aren't satisfied just sort of sitting in a classroom and going home and opening a textbook, but they really want to dig in and do things. They want to experience what they're learning in the classroom. They want to try, even if that means failing. It's also a very multidisciplinary place. So we talked about the diversity of programs at Sloan, but you're also being given opportunities to connect with students across MIT's campus. So people from the engineering school, people who are working with science backgrounds and math backgrounds, there's so much opportunity there for collaboration. I've already said this word once, but I did really want to highlight the collaborative spirit of Sloanies. Again, this ties back into their humility. But really, something that we say quite often here is Sloanies helping Sloanies. This is, again, incredibly true to the community. It's not enough just to sort of succeed on their own, but they also want to see their classmates and other community members succeeding as well. And so finally, the community is a student-driven place. So we have over 70 clubs that range from career-focused to affinity group-focused to social clubs. I just added a sampling of some of our career clubs here. You can see that they are incredibly diverse, from some very sort of analytical focused clubs to clubs that focus on social issues and healthcare and finance, and just really across the board. Clubs, I talk about it being student driven. Clubs, conferences, and events are great ways to build leadership skills, to learn something new, to make connections within the Sloan community with people who are interested and passionate about the same things you are, but also externally. So many of these clubs host programming and sponsor programming and conferences and events that allow you to connect with industry leaders as well. And finally, it's an opportunity to give back and contribute to the community. So if you don't see something represented through these extracurriculars, through these clubs, once you come to campus, you do have the opportunity. We see people who propose new clubs all the time, and Sloan is here to sort of hear the case and if it makes sense, to provide the resources and support for your endeavors. And finally, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about our alumni community when I talked about community at Sloan. You can see that not only when you graduate from Sloan, not only are you a Sloan alum, but you are also an MIT alum, of which there are over 136,000. This is a very active group. As you think about programs that you are considering for your MBA, I encourage you to think not just about sort of quantity. Yes, we do put these numbers up just to show sort of the breadth of alums that we have out there and their diversity, but also, you know, think about the quality of those alums. Are they people who are going to connect? Are they willing to have a conversation about your career path? And again, the characteristics that I talked about with the student body are certainly applicable to the alumni community as well. That humility, the willingness to help, Sloanies helping Sloanies, this will carry on through the alumni network long after graduation. You can see, not to make it an afterthought, this is really sort of interesting and fascinating stat, but they're also an incredibly entrepreneurial community as well, as you can see on the right-hand side. All right, so we talked about community, and now I want to talk about the curriculum. So the curriculum at MIT is both flexible and hands-on. I'd say those can be quite differentiating factors if you look across programs or MBA programs at different schools and think about their curriculum. MIT does ask that you take a one-semester core. The one-semester core, which I sort of outlined on the left-hand side, just gives you foundational skills and materials that are really important for all business leaders, regardless of the discipline or industry that you choose to pursue. So once you've completed the one-semester core, January, you can see this is a unique experience for MIT. It's called Independent Activities Period, and we can dig into that later, but it gives you another opportunity to really make this experience what you need it to be and what you are looking for. Finally, in the spring, you begin to start taking electives. These are completely up to you. So some people opt for breadth in their electives, some people opt for depth, some people want less structure, and some people want more structure. As you can see, there are over 215 electives just here at Sloan alone. Action learning labs, again, this is part of that hands-on piece. I'll touch on that in a few slides. And then you can also take up to 3 graduate level courses outside of Sloan, somewhere else at MIT or with one of Harvard's professional schools. So that might be a way for you to think about it if you're looking for a less structured experience. If you do want a more structured experience, you could consider electing a track or a certificate. So as you can see for tracks, there's entrepreneurship and innovation, enterprise management and finance, and certificates, analytics, healthcare, and sustainability. Not only might this give you a little bit more structure, but it also gives you maybe a credential on your resume if that's something that you don't have prior experience with. For instance, if you don't have an analytical background but want to do something within that field, or if you don't have a healthcare background but want to do something within that field, that certificate, completing that certificate might be a good signal to employers that you do have that exposure. And then dual degrees. So I know a number of you are asking questions about our LGO program. That is the most integrated dual degree that we have with our engineering school. I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty of that right now, but we can certainly talk later or offline about it. We also have a dual degree with the MIT's Department of Urban Studies and Planning, as well as Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. I should also note that even though I've listed these options under the second year slide, under the second year heading, you certainly don't have to wait until second year to declare or to begin fulfilling requirements for tracks or certificates. So just another quick note on the dual degrees, you do have to be admitted to these programs independently of your Sloan application. So once you are admitted, for example, to the Harvard Kennedy School, then you can sort of work with each school's registrar to make a plan for your education. And then the LGO, I know the biggest question here is, can I apply for that at the same time as my MBA early admission application? As of now, no, you cannot. You can certainly be an LGO student, but you would have to apply to the engineering school in the year prior to your matriculation to the MBA program. All right, so MIT's motto is mind in hand. And again, this just means that it is not enough for you to just sit in a classroom and learn from lectures and textbooks, but in order to really make an impact, in order to really solidify what you're learning, you need to get out there and do it. So our Action Learning Labs have been around for years and years and years, and we continue to add and update and tweak what we're doing and where we're going. Many of these have international travel components. Some are focused around a particular industry or functional area, but really there's so many opportunities to get your hands dirty and get some experience working with a company who's indicated, you know, a problem that they want MIT Sloan students to help them tackle. And finally, our third C after community and curriculum is career. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the career development experience, first of all. So our career development office, or the CDO, is fond of saying career is everywhere. So yes, they might be your first source of advising, or, you know, to provide a particular resource to you, but you'll also have a lot of career support, exploration opportunities through clubs, through conversations with faculty, and through the alumni network as well. So some highlights to think about here: it's a very personalized experience. It's high touch if you need it. There's tools and resources that help support all sorts of job searches, whether that's something a little bit more traditional, maybe sort of the more formalized on-campus recruiting process, or something that's a little more self-driven and off the beaten path. There are resources and people to help you through any of those experiences. And I also wanted to mention that the Career Development Office is really available to help you through the entire career search cycle. So from exploration to recruiting, to the offer and how to accept that, how to negotiate, anything in between, they are there for you. And so as you can see, our students are incredibly successful. So within 3 months of graduation, 97% of the class of 2020 had job offers. And so, of course, at this point, we're beyond that 3-month mark. I imagine it to be even higher. You can see some of our top employers, which range across industries, from consulting to finance. You can see Ford Motor Company, automotive. There is some retail players here in Wayfair. Technology, of course, is growing all the time. And then these are just representative of sort of the top employers, larger employers. But we also have a number of students who decide to pursue things that are, as I said, a little bit more off the beaten path. They might not hire as many MBA students, or might not be as familiar to the rest of us, but you certainly are encouraged to pursue the interests and the careers that you are excited about. And then finally, this exciting stat at the bottom, you know, the alumni are entrepreneurial, and you can see it here as well. 10% of the class of 2019 actually started a business after graduation, which is pretty incredible. All right, so that is why I think you should apply to MIT Sloan through the MBA early admission process. But now I'd like to talk a little bit about how to apply. The application timeline, just to give you a quick overview of what the next couple of months will look like. On April 6th, your application is due. You can certainly submit in advance of April 6th, but we will not start evaluating those applications until after the deadline. So there's no advantage to applying earlier, though I would suggest that you apply, I think a couple days before the deadline is definitely the sweet spot, just in case you run into any technical issues. And then we'll spend April and May inviting people to complete an interview with us and actually conducting those interviews. And then May 20th, we'll release decisions as far as who has been admitted to the MBA program through the MBA early admission process. And then July 1st is when you'll have to accept your offer and pay the deposit by. So the deposit of $750 is definitely lower than that of a traditional applicant. So there's another small reason to consider applying now. And then if admitted, we'll stay in touch with you while you're working full time. So there's a number of ways that we'll do this. We'll provide content. We'll keep you up to date on what's happening at MIT. We want to hear from you about what you're up to. And we'll also start connecting you with our community, whether that be current students or other fellow admits through the MBA early application process. So we're currently developing lots of ways for you to stay in touch with each other, as well as at the school. And then the application checklist. So this is the requirements that we ask you to submit with your application by April 6th. These are all required components of the application. We ask for a resume, which should be formatted as a professional resume. We also ask that you sort of redact your name and address information at the top, or just leave it off. So that's including your education experience, any internships that you've had, things that you've been involved in on campus. We ask for a cover letter. Again, you should format this and think about it as if you were applying to a quote unquote job here at MIT Sloan. That job, of course, is a place in the MBA class. 2 recommendation letters, one from a academic source, so from a faculty member, and one from a professional source. So ideally from a supervisor during one of your internships. But if people have questions, we can talk a little bit about what to do if that doesn't work. Academic transcripts, somewhat self-explanatory, but we will look at things beyond just your GPA. We'll see, what types of courses you were taking. Were there any trends throughout your academic experience? GMAT or GRE score. So we are totally agnostic when it comes to GMAT or GRE. You are not advantaged or disadvantaged for submitting one over the other. The video statement. So one of the most fun pieces of your application for me to read is, the opportunity for you to sort of leap off the paper and show us who you are. Start showing us a little bit of your personality. A lot of questions on this. I would encourage you, you can certainly start off with a little bit of an introduction, but simply reiterating other pieces of your application is not the best use of this space. I think it's great to hear a little bit about something that you didn't have room for elsewhere. Maybe, why you're excited about Sloan, maybe things that you're passionate about outside of your career path. Definitely a really interesting piece of the application for us, and hopefully fun for you. And then there's no application fee for you as an MBA early admission applicant. MBA interviews are required, and they are by invitation only. They'll be completed by the admissions committee, but more details on that should you make it to that point in the process. So I'm trying to be somewhat brief when it comes to the application checklist. We will have a second webinar with application tips that will delve into more details here, but I do want to touch on some pieces just because, you know, hopefully you're getting started right now if you haven't already started thinking about this. And then please stay in touch. Right now, you know, save the date for a couple of upcoming events that we have around the MBA Early Admission application process. We have an online chat on February 6th, an app tips webinar on March 20th, and then another online chat on April 1st. Please join us again for those. And then I will go ahead and answer some of the questions that you sent in already or that you're posing in the chat box now. Great. So something that came up a couple of times I've seen is, you know, what sort of characteristics are you looking for, and are those different from the characteristics that you're looking for in a traditional MBA applicant? So the answer is no. We are looking for similar characteristics, we'll just see them in different ways. So within those components that I talked about, within those pieces of the application, oh, there we go, okay, well, not super important, but within these pieces of the application, we are looking for two separate categories. So one is demonstrated success, and one is personal attributes. And so, you know, things like your ability to lead and inspire others, a collaborative spirit, your intellectual curiosity, your ability to sort of generate new solutions. I'm not doing a very good job here with my slideshow. I'll just keep it here for now. So those are the same characteristics that we're looking for in you as a college undergraduate, as well as the professional students that we see in the application process later on. We're just, again, looking for them in different places. So while you won't have the full-time work experience that they will have, hopefully you will have an internship or multiple internships. You'll have leadership experience through campus organizations and events. So you are able to show us, you know, how collaboration during team projects, and again, outside of the classroom during extracurriculars. So you have a number of options, a number of avenues to demonstrate those characteristics without having full-time work experience. All right. So I also had a couple questions about diversity groups and diversity here at Sloan. So as you could see during the presentation, we do very intentionally bring together a very diverse class. There's a lot more learning and growth opportunity within a diverse group of students. So here in admissions, some things that we do is partnering with organizations like MLT, or Management Leaders for Tomorrow, the Forte Foundation. Within Sloan more broadly, you know, there have been multiple diversity and inclusion focus groups that are made up of faculty, staff, administration, and students. And then, of course, we have active student clubs based around affinity as well. SWIM, or Sloan Women in Management, is one of the most popular clubs that we have, with one of the biggest populations. We also have clubs like Black Business Students Association, the Hispanic Business Club, and Sloan Pride. And if you go on the website, many of them have websites, and some of them even have Instagram accounts as well. So I'd highly encourage you to dig into the ones that are most valuable to you to see what sort of programming and what sort of events and opportunities to get involved that they might have. And then question, let's see. Are you expecting early admission candidates to have a very well-defined plan for the future? So I'd say no. The short answer is no, definitely not long-term. We do expect that you have a sense of what you are doing after graduation. hopefully for most of you, you'll have an offer by the time you apply April 6th. You'll have a plan. This is certainly not a requirement, but we do want to see that you have a sense of what you want to do, that you have some direction for that next step. But do we expect you to know what you want to do 5 or 10 or 20 years? Absolutely not. The MBA will help you explore that through various clubs, through career sessions, by talking to your diverse group of classmates. So we don't expect you to know, have the rest of your life planned out, but we do expect you to have some sense of what you're interested in for this next step.
With that, we had a question related to that section of the application, and is that expected that should be sentences or more like an essay explaining?
Well, I'd say, you're welcome to keep to the point. You don't have to overly elaborate on it. I think use whatever room that you need to share that kind of information, but it certainly doesn't need to be a full essay. And Reed, feel free to jump in if you see something that's coming up that might be interesting.
We just got a question that I think is important to address, and if we apply now through the early admission and don't get accepted, would this limit your chance of getting admitted later on through the regular process?
Yeah, that is a great question, and the answer is no, absolutely not. So we expect to see, this is a relatively early program, so it hasn't happened yet, but we fully expect to see people who just maybe weren't ready during the early admission application process to come back with that experience, to come back as a more sort of fully formed professional and be successful in that process. So yes, we're encouraging of reapplicants. Had a couple questions about the weight that we put on various components of the application. So we don't weight anything. All of the criteria are important. We wouldn't want someone who is incredibly bright and really has a stellar academic background and GMAT or GRE score, but has no interpersonal skills, and vice versa. We wouldn't want to admit someone who is excellent interpersonally, but has, would struggle in the MBA curriculum. One thing that I will talk about, I said I was kind of staying away from some of the application tips because that's coming up in a couple of months. But I did want to talk a little bit about recommenders because that's something that you'll need to think about sooner rather than later. So that's my first tip, is to ask your recommender as soon as possible if you haven't already, so you give them plenty of time. So yes, April 6th is their deadline as well. We're usually able to give a tiny bit of a grace period, but really that April 6th deadline is not just your deadline to submit the application, but the recommenders as well. So the earlier you can connect with them and make the request, the better. As always, be gracious. They are probably writing several letters of recommendation, so make sure you're showing your gratitude. If they have time for it, I would suggest having a conversation with them about why you're doing this, about why you've decided to apply to an MBA, maybe what your next step is career-wise, why you're interested in Sloan. Just sort of remind them of who you are and what's important to you, and where you excel or where you want to excel. So that might help them write a more compelling application. As always, the best recommenders are people who know you well, who can speak beyond the grade you got in the class that we can see on your transcript. But if they can talk a little bit more about your ability to work with others through group projects, maybe you had them a couple times, maybe you were, had them in class and also TA'd. So people who know you well usually write a much more sort of compelling and additive recommendation. Again, if you are looking to connect again with an internship supervisor, someone that you worked with during an internship, make sure you're reconnecting with them. Be gracious, remind them of who you are and what you did, just to jog their memory. If you are a junior or earlier in your college experience, keep this in mind as you go forward and continue to sort of cultivate those relationships so that when the time comes to build or to ask for a recommendation, you have a good relationship with them.
I have another question here that is sort of similar to what you were speaking on, and tips that you would maybe recommend to juniors or anyone is, someone asked, are there events in other cities where we can kind of learn more and meet alumni that we're able to go to?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So highly encourage you, whether you're applying this year or in a future year, to really get to know our community, and events are a great way to do that. So we do host events all across the world, often hosted by our admissions office, but also hosted by students and sometimes alums. So do keep an eye on our website to see if there's an event near you. We also did quite a few visits to college campuses last fall. So do make sure that you are looking out not only for events in nearby cities that you're close to, but also right on your campus. Again, just continue to look on the website to explore. If there's contact information available, you're welcome to use it. But make sure that you're asking good questions, that you're going into that conversation prepared. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great question. Other tips for people who are a little bit further away, besides getting to know Sloan and getting to know other programs that you're interested in, cultivating relationships with potential recommenders. This probably goes without saying, but continue to do well in your classes. If you haven't had an internship, I think it can be really valuable and additive to add that to your resume before applying. Continue getting involved with things that you're interested in, that you're passionate about. Don't do it to check a box on the application, but do it because you are interested in that particular area. Think about taking on leadership roles if they're available to you. So yeah, those are all great opportunities, great ways to strengthen your application for the future. Sorry, I'm flipping through some of the earlier questions, and there were definitely some good ones in there. So someone asks, can you get in with a bad GPA and a low GMAT? So two responses come to mind. One is that you'd have to be pretty outstanding in other ways in order to compensate. But the other, perhaps more important piece is those numbers or those experiences, your academic experience, your GPA, your GMAT, or your GRE score, it's not simply a measure for us to sort of compare you to other applicants. It's not only about the application process, but it also helps us have an understanding of, will you be able to succeed in the program? So if you had a low GPA and a low GMAT or GRE score, we might have some serious concerns that you would struggle in this rigorous curriculum. So I saw a question just come in about, does the early admission hold the same application deadline with regular MBA? No, they are a little bit different, and we only have one application deadline for the early admission process. With the traditional MBA process, we do have 3. So financial aid, this is actually another great thing to start preparing for. So I know this is on everyone's mind, and it can be daunting when you think about going to graduate school and looking at that price tag. Here at Sloan, everyone who applies is considered for scholarship. As an MBA early applicant, we are not able to grant you a scholarship at the time of application or when you receive your admissions decision through this process. Instead, you'll be considered during the year that you're about to matriculate. But beyond that, again, this is a really sort of supportive, hands-on community. I would have those conversations when the time comes about other financing options that are available to you. But from a personal standpoint, I would also start planning now. So the earliest that you're going to start your MBA, if you applying through this program, is 2 years from your graduation in the spring. So use those 2 years, use those 3, 4, or 5 years to start saving, to think, to be prudent about other large purchases that you're buying. In the meantime, it does give you an opportunity to sort of plan ahead a little bit more, which is an advantage that sometimes a more traditional applicant might not have. There are also external scholarships that you can keep your eye open for that might not come from Sloan, but could support your education here. So I had a question that came in prior to today's event about MIT's location here in Boston, or technically we're in Cambridge. And then even more sort of specific, we're in a place called Kendall Square here in Cambridge, which has really been a hotbed for tech companies, biotech companies. There's a great healthcare ecosystem, a great technology ecosystem here. Obviously, MIT is ripe for opportunities and to get involved, but we've seen so many companies come in right in our neighborhood as well. And then, Boston more broadly, there's a great academic ecosystem. So a lot of people are here to learn and to grow and to advance themselves. So I think it's a fantastic place to study and to learn and to begin your, to pursue a degree. So someone asks about how the traditional MBA application process would be different from the early admissions. So all of the components are completely identical with only a couple exceptions. So for this year anyway, and we're always sort of tweaking based on what works and what doesn't. The only exception this year is that we only ask for 1 letter of recommendation in the traditional process, and we ask for an organizational chart, which doesn't really apply to you as an undergraduate student. So the basis, the bulk of the application process is similar. Like I said, we're looking for the same characteristics. We're just looking for them through different avenues. Yeah, much of the process is very similar.
I have another question here about the resume. So if you've done a lot of different, work experiences in your undergrad or other related things, do you recommend having a complete record of what you've done on your resume, or really only highlighting a select few?
Well, as a current undergraduate student, or maybe you're in a graduate program, your resume should only be 1 page long at this point. So that gives you a little bit of structure and some guidelines to think about what makes sense. Think about we're looking at your entire application. So, what can you share elsewhere? What really is important? I'd say, broadly speaking, without knowing your specific situation, I'd say I'd rather know a little bit more about the things that were really important, that were really relevant and additive to your experience, than just a list of a ton of different things that you were involved in. And you can get creative too if you want to, leave 2 or 3 bullets for some extracurricular experience where you had a leadership role and, had a lot of involvement. And then, just 1 bullet point where you just sort of use commas to share other organizations that you participated in as a member, you can get creative, but I encourage you to just use that one page. So if you have several different internships, yeah, I mean, again, it's up to you. You might think about creative ways to just let us know that you've had those all, but only focus on the ones that were most meaningful or substantial, as far as giving them, more bullet points or more description. A lot of this is really just using your best judgment. So please do read directions and follow directions. But beyond that, just use your best judgment. We are not looking for perfection. So there isn't one way to do this. Someone asked about Sloan's relatively small size and how that might impact social and educational dynamics at Sloan. It's my strong belief that a smaller program is really advantageous for you from a number of different perspectives. Academically and career-wise, the access that you have to faculty members, to the career office, to other resources here on campus is going to be increased with a smaller group of people who are trying to access those people. So I think your access is huge. And then I also think it gives you a better opportunity to really build relationships. And to me, that's what, the network is all about. Sure, you might, cold call or cold email some alums in the process, and that's, expected and perfectly fine and will often be helpful and valuable. But I think there's also a lot of value in being able to build relationships with people beyond just knowing that they are one of, thousands in the MBA program at the time. All right, so we're nearing one, but maybe we can do one more question prior to that. So what is the best way to address a weakness in the application? The best way to address a weakness, if you're unable to address it directly, for example, like retaking the GMAT or the GRE, the best way to address it, I think, is to really shine in the other components of the application. So again, we don't expect perfection, but we do want to see people who are quite strong. And so if one particular area is not that place for you, then I would make sure that you are sort of compensating in other ways. I'd say I would not waste real estate within your application by making excuses for a piece of your application that you don't see as being particularly strong. Again, just really find ways to highlight why you do deserve a place in this competitive program. All right, so you remember my stay connected slide that I just couldn't seem to get to again, but please do stay in touch with us. We still have plenty of time to put together a really strong MBA early application. And I hope to see many of you apply on or before April 6th. As I mentioned, we have a couple of events online coming up, a couple online chats, and another webinar specifically for application tips. So please do tune into those. If you do happen to be in the Boston area, I encourage you to check out MIT Sloan's campus. You're welcome to stop by our office. We have a really active email address that you're welcome to use for personal questions or questions that weren't answered here. And again, please continue digging into the website as well and learning about the MBA program itself. Anytime you see events that are focused on the MBA program, you're more than welcome to attend because, of course, that is the program that you will eventually be a part of. But other than that, please, good luck going forward, and I look forward to learning all about you on April 6th. Thanks, everyone.